I'm supposed to be Henry. And I remember when we were young. Well, we came here. Our father died around this time of the year, and Mom came here to Goose Bay in 1955 with 4 kids, and we stayed over in Norman Edmonds' old house the first year, and then Uncle Tom and they arranged for a little place for Mom to stay, and eventually they got the house where we're staying now, which not this house but the old one, which was Air Force Lot number 1. The Air Force allotted the houses, the land and property to the people in Happy Valley. But anyway, we used to go over to Birch Island on the old bridge, and a lot of times I remember getting splinters in my feet on the bridge. The bridge was quite high, actually, and we'd go over, and in the springtime, we would be really jealous of all the Birch Island kids because they'd get to stay home from school because of the flood. And you'd see houses going down the river and things like that. We wouldn't think about that. We were just thinking about how they were out of school and we weren't. And we used to take a run over to the old sandbar where the walkway goes through now. That's where we used to swim. And I remember once going out there actually with Horace and Bill Smith. You remember Bill Smith? And we caught trout out there on a rod, just out from there on a rod. And that's where we used to spend all our time. And we'd spend summers out in boat with Joe's brother Horace, and he'd take us out to all the beaches. And people used to say that the people of Happy Valley were dark because they were sandblasted. Anyway, we used to have a lot of fun, and we still do. A lot of when I was growing up, there was still a lot of remains of places from the base, and over across from where you park your vehicles, there used to be tunnels there, and that's where we used to hide and play games and things like this. And on the base, there were still lots of old army buildings, and down Otter Creek, there was places where there was gun emplacements, and behind where not Skipper Joe's, Darrell Bennison, their gas station, where Uncle Sam's meat market used to be. There used to be entrenchments made there where they used to have guns there. I was right, I don't know, I used to be right involved with the war and all this kind of stuff, and I had a real interest in my uncle, Tom. He used to tell me stories about all the stuff because he was here working when the base was on the go. And they were the ones that built the theater, the Aurora Theater was. And I used to work there on Saturday afternoon sweeping up all the horse manure after the Western movies. So anyway, so he used to get me all interested in the war and things like this. And so I sort of got an interest in that. But I was also interested in being a fireman ever since I was a little kid. And so the fire station was right across from my house where we used to live. And the Americans came down and they dropped off a whole big tri-wall. It was a big cardboard box, and it was all full of firefighting gear. And there was these big helmets, silver ones. So me and my brother, we put them on, and we went over in my uncle's smokehouse where he was smoking fish, and we used to try to see who could stay in the longest with it on. And whoever stayed the longest, they might get a chance to be a firefighter. And so anyway, that's not exactly how it worked, but the bells would ring whenever the fire truck would go, and we would run and jump on the back of the fire truck. I was probably 13 or 14 then when I was actually going. And when you get to the fire, the people would say, "What are you doing here?" And the fireman would say, "Oh, he's with us." And so I used to help them with the hoses and that, and then I'd sneak my face in around the door and try to get a little whiff of the smoke. And the more that I could stand it, like the longer I stayed there, the better I thought I might have a chance to get a job in the fire department. Gary got a job up on base before me. a year before me, and we both ended up being in the fire department. Now, that's a fire department story. So, actually, in reality, I got at least 50 years in the fire department in the valley. And we've been to some interesting fires and some bad ones and some fun ones and whatever and things like this. But I was interested in all kinds of other things, like airplanes, crashes and things like that, even though I don't like flying on planes, not that much. But I've always made it a hobby to sort of, in the early days, to go out and try to find some. So one of the ones, Joe, that I was to was the one that your father, Joe's father, found these guys. They were in February month, I believe it was, and it was just in back of Kenemu, and he sent the message and also helped rescue them, and they had crashed. Their plane had iced up, and they had crashed in and around the Kenemu area there, and there was one fatality, one guy, and the rest survived, and they were coming from either they were coming from or going to, not a very good story, is it, Iceland. But anyway, they had a lot of sheepskin clothing and things like that and blankets, and they were able to keep warm, and they made snowshoes, tried to make snowshoes out of Greenland, there you go, Joe. Anyway, they eventually they were found, and Horace's father was instrumental in getting them rescued. But I later read that two of the guys who had gone in there with dog teams and that to help rescue the people were with Admiral Scott when he went to the South Pole. And I believe Hank Schaus may have had something to do with that.
He did, yeah.
Anyway, I'm not going to say something on the air. I like souvenirs. Let's just keep it like that, okay? So anyway, that was one. And then we went, and another time we visited, this is when we were younger, we visited a B-36 that had crashed over across the river. It's 13 miles flying time by helicopter. And we found all flying hats, and we actually found bullets and lots of other things, and a bicycle. And then, I can tell you, this is funny. So anyway, over across the river, you probably knows about this one, Joe. There was a jet, and the remains of it were left over across the river near where they were cutting wood, Tevenies, near that area where the old fire truck is too. And so one time we went over there and we saw the plane was getting all cut up, and I said, "Oh, that's people selling that to the copper man. We got to do something about this, Gary." "What are we going to do?" I said. "Oh my." So anyway, that year Hickeys built a road across, and they were hauling logs and everything. So we built a big sleigh. Oh boy, this is crazy. But anyway, we built a big sleigh, and we took what was left of the plane and put it on the sleigh, and we came across the river, right, and up to my yard. So anyway, Robert was just a little baby then. I remember my wife said, "Your dad's crazy." "What are you going to do with that?" And I said, "Well, it's a play toy. I'm saving it for history." I said, Robert can play with it later on when he gets older. So anyway, it stayed in the yard for a while, and eventually Gary had to take his turn of having the plane in the yard. Otherwise, I was going to be divorced. So Gary had it in there a while, and then they brought it back to ours. So anyway, I put it on a trailer, and I said, I got to save this some way or other. I gotta put it somewhere where nobody can find it. And I was going down the road, and Mike Hickey called me. No, he stopped by me. He said, "Where are you going with that?" And I said, "I'm hiding it." He said it would look really nice on my garage. And I said, "Okay, what are you going to give me for it?" He said, "I'll give you 2 loads of topsoil." And I said, "Okay." So then he takes the plane anyway, and he brings it up to his yard. About a month later, he calls me. He said, the newspaper is calling me. They wants me to tell them the story of the plane. I said, well, it's all up to you now. It's in your hands now. He said, I got to get rid of it. He said, or the wife is going to divorce me. So anyway, Bruce Haynes got it now in his backyard. But we did save the plane. But anyway, while we keep on the quest in that same area, I'm supposed to be talking about Birch Island, but my adventure that I wanted to do, I made this adventure in on Grand Lake Road. There was a plane crashed in there years ago in around GL2. And probably 25 years ago, I walked in there. There was still a lot of stuff around. There was a radio that they were using for signaling and some other devices. There was pots and pans and things like this and quite a few things. It took about an hour to walk in there. So anyway, I went in there a couple of times, and then I met up with Dick Budgell one time. And Dick and his brother, they were part of, when the plane crashed in 1945, I think it was, they were part of the rescue unit that went out to look for the plane. And they just packed some grub in their knapsack, and Dick had a pistol. They used to carry pistols in those days. Anyway, they were in the woods so far, they didn't know exactly where the plane was, and Dick took a shot at a partridge, and then he heard a crack, and someone shouted out. Anyway, they came across a very sad scene. There was people in a bad way. The plane had burned a lot, and they didn't really know. They tried to help the people as much as they could, and they lit a fire and kept them warm. But his brother remembered that they had been to the club the night before, and just before they left, they filled up this big old bottle, a whiskey bottle full of punch, laced with some alcohol in it. And so poor old soul was dying that night, and that's what they gave him, some of that lovely punch out of that bottle. So anyway, make a long story short, I took Dick in there. He's gone now, but he was my friend. I took him in there on the 50th anniversary of that crash, and we were in there moseying around, and he found the old whiskey bottle. Wow. Yeah, and so the remains of that plane is in on GL2. You got to look really hard now to find it, and so that was some of the adventures that I was in. But as a kid growing up in Happy Valley, it was really nice, and I used to listen to Joe and Gordy on the Mokami Mountain there. Hello, Gordon. I remember how it used to be, and to me, Saturdays we're watching John Edmonds, Horace, Donald Brumfield, and all these different fellas coming back from down the bay fishing with their coolers all filled with trout and things like this. And then in the evening, country music with Gordy. And so, yeah, so I used to listen to that a lot. And life was very simple, really. Halloween, we would go down as far as the Hudson Bay store, and you'd get a big apple from the manager of the store, and that was the end of our world. And I used to be in the Boy Scouts too. We used to go to Mrs. Pierrot's and pick up the lamp and walk over to the old scout hall and put on the fire and things like that. And we'd fight with the Uniteds. I think they used to win most of the time. They had bigger guys like Joe and them. But anyway, that was what it was like. But I was always into different things. Like, I'm going to tell you another little story. So me and my brother was always trying to outdo ourselves on pictures. I'm going to say that even Art Williams always used to say, Gary takes better pictures than you, George. And so anyway, we were supposed to go on this trip down to see Mokami, and it was April, and I didn't want to go. My skidoo was put away. But we made our way down the Northwest River, and we made our way down to Savvy. And, you know, a lot of places we went through was just grass and no snow. And then I said, we should turn back. We should turn back. And then when I got down there, I saw this view of the Mokami and the cabin near it. And I said, I got to get that picture. I just got to get that shot. So I moseyed a little farther on the ice than I should have. And the next thing, I was in the water. And I don't remember that much. I just remember trying to survive and being very cold and my clothes getting heavier. And I got to some ice I could hold on to, and then Gary threw me a rope. He was crying. And then he hauled me into safety, and I said, come on, we got to go home now. He said, what about drying off? Oh, later. Anyway, we stopped eventually and had a little fire. And then I didn't know how to tell the wife. I lost the brand new Skidoo. And so, but I did. And her father, he was involved with the insurance and everything. We had our Skidoo insured. But anyway, we arranged to go down in a helicopter with Greg Bakey. And we went down the next day. And then we tried fishing where the Skidoo had gone. We hauled up the thermos bottle, the knapsack. The coffee was still warm. But we didn't get the Skidoo because Greg said, I'm not going to attach to it because I can't get a good hold on it. So I said, okay. So 2 months, we put a float out, and 2 months passed by. And that whole place, it was in June when we went back to try to find the Skidoo. But I'm going to tell you, there's always something wonderful about taking a picture and taking pictures. So when Gary hauled me out with the rope around my waist, in the background was a cabin, and a tree was in a certain way. And I said, take a picture of me. And so I was all right. I mean, I survived. I was all right. And I said, take a picture of me. So the only thing we had to go on was that picture. And so we had Cor Blake take us down and I had a friend up in the fire department, Tex Arsenal, and he had diving gear. So I decided I'm going to become a diver. So he said, you got any experience with it? And I said, oh yeah. Yeah, I've done this before. A couple of times, I said, when I was in England. I actually had tried it, though, over in England when I went to visit my sister. And so we piled all the stuff in the suitcase and armed with the picture and hoping that we were going to find it. We went down there. So after we moved back and forth in the boat until finally we saw the tree almost like it was in the thing. So I threw out the jigger and we got something solid. I said, that's it, I'm going for it. So, of course, Gary was scared and so was I. But I put on the diving gear with the tanks and got down, and there she was. I tried her, hauled her a couple of times, but she wouldn't start. But we got her up, and we got her, and I used her for 3 years after that. Derek Russell fixed her up, but that was the beauty of pictures. If it wasn't for the picture, we never would have found it. But anyway, on a sad note, and I'm not going to say it's sad, but the same rope that he hauled me out with when he died, I put that rope in his pocket. So when he's ready again, he'll haul me up. So we used to get in all kinds of trouble. But you know what? If you don't move from anywhere, you don't have things happen to you. And so I think I don't want to die now, but if I was to die, I would say I had a very, very good life, like growing up in Happy Valley with all our friends that we had on Hamilton River Road and the things to do with the base and everything. Like he mentioned something there. He mentioned JFK. But I'm one of those people that likes to meet people. So the ambassador of the United States was up at the plane there, and I just got off of work, and he was there, and I said, I don't like everything the U.S. does, but I said, I am a big fan of the Kennedys. I said, do you ever see Ted Kennedy? And he said, yeah, occasionally. I said, tell him he got a fan here in Goose Bay. So I wrote my name on a serviette. And that Christmas, I received a brown envelope from Washington, D.C., the Russell Building, from Senator Ted Kennedy, and said, best of luck, George. and like that was the way I used to be. I used to indulge in calling, speaking to anybody and whatever. Like, yes, ma'am, you have a question? What happened to your picture?
No. What do you mean used to be?
What?
What do you mean that's the way I used to be?
I still am. Anyway, so while we're on that little search of this, this is a little bit about how I am. There was this guy, he was in the Legionnaire magazine. His name was Keith Ogilvy, and he lived in Ottawa. And I later read about him that he was a Spitfire pilot over in England and that he was a prisoner of war in one of the Stalags. Anyway, I called him. Wanted to have a big chat with him, right? So we became friends over the phone, and I became friends with their family, and he sent me pictures of him in the wartime and everything. And later on A&E, I saw a story on him. He was the last prisoner of war to escape out of the prison, Stalag, whatever it was, and it was in the movie The Great Escape. And so he was my friend, my pen pal, for all those years. And so I used to reach out, and that's how, by reaching out, you get to meet a lot of interesting people and things like that. That's nothing to do with Happy Valley, though, but that just has to do with me. So, what? Anyway, I don't know what else to talk about now. Joe, you want to say a few words again? I'll just tell you about my trip to Battle Harbor, and that'll be good enough. Anyway, I went to Battle Harbor. Brenda, we went down on some kind of do. My uncle used to run Battle Harbor and their family ran it for about 38 years, and so I finally got to go there. But anyway, we're down there and we're in the nice little house and that, and then my cousin runs the place and she says, guess who's coming here tonight? And I said, who? She said, Alan Doyle. And so anyway, I'm waiting to meet him, and I'm going along the pathway and I sees him, and that night anyway, he plays a few songs, and everybody enjoyed it and everything like that. And the next day, while we're at having lunch there, the cook says to me, are you going to sing tomorrow night? And I said, I doubt it. And she said, but I heard you singing at the table. And I said, that's all right. I just like to sing now and then, whatever. So anyway, we get to the second night, and Alan is taking a low profile. He's sort of over at the bar. And the lady said, George, would you play a song? I said, I can't sing. And she said, yes, you can. And Alan said, I'll set it all up for you. So anyway, just like this, I get carried away. I sang about, 10 songs. and finally my niece said, she came up to me, she said, I think Alan wants to play a couple songs. and I said, okay. So anyway, Alan said, thank you so much, George, for opening for me. And then at the end, anyway, we did a song together, which was kind of nice. But anyway, I'm going to pass it over to Joe.